The message came at midnight. Commander Alan Miller jumped from his bed when the alarm sounded. Red lights flashed across his small room on Earth Defense Station Alpha. "Commander to the bridge. Emergency transmission from Theta Colony," the voice said over the speakers. Miller pulled on his uniform quickly. At 45, he had seen many emergencies, but something in the operator's voice told him this was different. 5 minutes later, Miller stood on the bridge, looking at the main screen. The face of a young woman appeared. Her hair was messy, and there was blood on her cheek. "This is Lisa Boyd from Theta Colony," she said. Her voice shook. "We are under attack by unknown ships. They came without warning. Their weapons..." The transmission broke for a moment. "Their weapons are like nothing we've seen. Half the colony is gone. They sent us a message." She looked to the side as if checking something. "They say they are the Xanthian Empire, and we must surrender or be destroyed. We need help now." The screen went black. Miller turned to his second-in-command, Lieutenant Samantha Wright. She was young but smart, the best tactical officer he had worked with. "What do we know about this Xanthian Empire?" Miller asked. Wright shook her head. "Nothing, sir. No records in our database." Miller nodded. "Contact Earth Command. Tell them we need to send a response team to Theta Colony right away." 2 hours later, Miller faced the 3 admirals on the command screen. They looked worried. "We are sending your ship, the EDF Horizon," Admiral Frank Peters said. "Take a small team to check the situation." Wright, standing beside Miller, stepped forward. "Sir, with respect, if this is a new alien contact with superior weapons, we should send the full fleet." Admiral Peters frowned. "Lieutenant, we have faced alien threats before. They usually turn out to be pirates with stolen tech. Let's not overreact." Miller saw Wright's jaw tighten, but she stayed quiet. 3 days later, the EDF Horizon dropped out of jump space near Theta Colony. Miller stood on the bridge, looking at the planet on the screen. "Scan for life signs and damage," he ordered. Officer Peter Kelly worked at his station. "Sir, I'm seeing massive destruction. The main colony buildings are. They're just gone. There's a crater 2 miles wide where the center should be." Wright looked at the readings. "This is not pirate work, sir." "Life signs?" Miller asked, his voice low. "Very few, sir. Maybe 200 people. The colony had 5,000. Miller closed his eyes for a moment. "Send down the rescue teams, and keep scanning for any ships in the area." 6 hours later, Miller walked through what was left of Theta Colony. Buildings were broken like toys. The air smelled of smoke and worse things. Survivors sat in groups, many hurt, all with the same empty look in their eyes. Boyd, the woman from the message, limped toward him. Her arm was in a makeshift sling. "Commander," she said, "you're too late for most of us, but you need to see something." She led Miller and Wright to a small metal object half buried in the dirt. It was black and smooth, unlike any human technology. "It's a message beacon," Boyd said. "They left it after the attack." Miller nodded to Wright, who carefully activated the device. A hologram appeared above it. The figure was tall, with gray-blue skin and eyes with sideways pupils. When it spoke, the words came out in perfect English. "This territory now belongs to the Xanthian Empire. Your resistance has been noted. The next human world will face total destruction unless full surrender is offered. This is not negotiable." The hologram disappeared. Miller, Wright, and Boyd stood in silence for a long moment. "Sir," Wright finally said, "I don't think these are pirates." Miller looked up at the sky. "No, Lieutenant. This is war." He turned to his communications officer. "Contact Earth Command. Tell them everything. And tell them to prepare the fleet." As Miller looked at the destroyed colony around him, he knew humanity was facing something it had never seen before. But he also knew that humans had one thing the Xanthians would never expect. They never gave up. 6 months passed. The Xanthian Empire attacked 3 more human colonies. Each time, they left few survivors, And the same message: surrender or die. Earth finally took the threat seriously. Admiral Diane Jackson stood in the main hall of Earth Defense Headquarters, looking at the faces of 200 ship captains. These men and women would lead the newly formed 7th Fleet against the Xanthian threat. "The enemy thinks we are weak," Jackson said. Her voice was strong and carried across the silent room. "They think we will bow down before their superior technology. They are wrong." She turned to the large screen behind her, showing a map of human space and the 4 lost colonies marked in red. "Today, we fight back." Captain Greg Howard sat in the front row. At 38, he was younger than most captains, but his tactical mind had earned him command of the EDF Defender, one of the fleet's newest ships. "Admiral," he said, standing up, "our intelligence on Xanthian technology is limited. How do we fight an enemy we don't understand?" Jackson nodded to a woman standing to the side. "This is Dr. Laura Phillips. For the past 4 months, she has been studying what little we know about Xanthian tech." Dr. Phillips stepped forward. She was small, with short brown hair and tired eyes that suggested many sleepless nights. "Their ships have energy shields that can block our laser weapons," she said, "but we're working on alternatives that might surprise them." Meanwhile, across the galaxy, Commander Miller and Lieutenant Wright sat in a dark corner of a bar on Proxima Station. The station was filled with refugees from the attacked colonies, people with nowhere to go and stories of horror. "He's late," Wright said, checking her watch. "He'll come," Miller answered. "He has as much reason to hate them as we do." The door opened, and a man walked in. He was tall, with a thick beard and a scar across his forehead. He looked around carefully before walking to their table. "Ben Collins," the man said, sitting down, "former administrator of New Hope Colony." Miller nodded. "We know. Thank you for meeting us." Collins leaned forward. "I hear you're looking for people who want to fight back, not just run." "We are," Wright said. "Earth is finally building a real fleet, but we need information. We need people who have seen the Xanthians up close." Collins smiled for the first time. "Then you found the right man. I've done more than see them. I've killed them." He pulled out a small device and placed it on the table. "My group managed to capture a Xanthian scout ship last month. The pilot died, but we got their tactical database before their friends came looking." Miller stared at the device. "How did you manage to capture a Xanthian ship? Their technology is years ahead of ours." Collins laughed. "That's their weakness, Commander. They're so proud of their fancy ships and weapons that they've grown careless. They don't expect resistance. They don't adapt." Wright picked up the device. "This could change everything." "There's more," Collins said, looking around to make sure no one was listening. "We've been building a network. People from all the colonies, ready to fight. We call ourselves the Resistance." Miller nodded slowly. "How many?" 500 fighters spread across 7 stations, but we need weapons, training, and coordination." Miller extended his hand. "Then let's work together. Earth is preparing a fleet, but we need eyes and ears inside Xanthian territory." Collins shook his hand. "My people are ready, but you should know, the Xanthians are planning something big. Their ships have been gathering near Centauri Prime." Wright looked concerned. "That's their next target." "No," Collins said, his face dark. "I think it's the staging area for a direct attack on Earth." Miller stood up. "We need to get this information to Admiral Jackson immediately." As they left the bar, Wright looked at Miller. "Do you think we have a chance, sir? Really?" Miller watched the tired refugees around them. "The Xanthians think they know what humans are. They think we'll give up, run away, or surrender." He smiled grimly. "They have no idea what they've started." Outside, 3 Xanthian patrol ships passed by the station windows, their purple lights reflecting on the metal walls. The war was just beginning. Admiral Jackson's fleet set up a base on an old, abandoned moon. They named it Bastion Point. The moon had no air, but deep caves provided perfect hiding spots for the fleet's ships. In the largest cave, Dr. Phillips and her team worked day and night. They had set up a lab filled with computers and strange equipment. On the main table sat pieces of Xanthian technology from the scout ship Collins had captured. "Have you found anything useful?" Admiral Jackson asked, entering the lab. Dr. Phillips looked up, her eyes red from lack of sleep. "Yes, and it's big." She pointed to a broken piece of metal with glowing blue lines. "This is part of their shield system. We've been testing different weapons against it." She walked to a screen showing test results. Energy weapons, lasers, plasma cannons. They all get blocked. But look at this. She played a video of a small metal ball hitting the shield piece. The shield flashed and then failed. "Physical projectiles?" Jackson asked, surprised. "Exactly. The Xanthians abandoned kinetic weapons centuries ago. They think they're primitive. Their shields are designed to stop energy, not solid objects." Captain Howard, who had been listening quietly, stepped forward. "So we could use simple bullets against them." "Better," Dr. Phillips said with a smile. "Rail guns firing tungsten rods. We already have the tech. We just need to mount them on our ships." Howard nodded slowly. "The Xanthians expect us to fight with lasers because that's what everyone uses. They won't be prepared for old-school projectile weapons." "How fast can we retrofit the fleet?" Jackson asked. 2 weeks for the first batch of ships," Phillips answered. "Maybe a month for all of them." Jackson turned to Howard. "Draft a battle plan. I want to hit them hard as soon as our ships are ready." Meanwhile, on a small Xanthian outpost near the edge of their territory, Miller and Collins moved silently through dark corridors. Both wore stolen Xanthian worker clothes. Wright waited in a small ship nearby, ready for a quick escape. "The main computer room should be ahead," Collins whispered, checking a small map. They reached a door with strange symbols. Collins placed a device on the lock, and it opened with a soft click. Inside, blue screens filled the walls. Miller quickly connected a data device to the main terminal. "How long?" Collins asked, watching the door. 2 minutes to copy their files," Miller answered. Suddenly, the screens change, showing images of different alien species. Miller stared at them. "What is this?" he asked quietly. Collins looked at the images. "These look like medical files." Miller pointed to one screen showing humans. "They're collecting data on us. Blood samples, DNA, genetic patterns." "Why?" Collins asked. Before Miller could answer, an alarm sounded. Red lights flashed in the corridor. "Time to go," Miller said, grabbing the data device, even though it wasn't finished copying. They ran through the corridors, dodging Xanthian workers. At an intersection, 3 Xanthian guards appeared, holding energy weapons. "Down," Miller shouted, pulling Collins to the floor as energy blasts hit the wall behind them. Miller threw a small explosive device. The blast knocked the guards down, and the humans ran past them toward the exit. Outside, they sprinted to the hidden ship where Wright waited with engines running. "Go, go, go," Miller shouted as they jumped inside. The ship lifted off as energy blasts hit around them. Wright pushed the engines to maximum, and they shot into space. "Did you get what we needed?" Wright asked. Miller connected the data device to their computer. "Not everything, but enough." He showed them the genetic files. The Xanthians aren't just conquering for territory. They're collecting genetic material from every species they find. "But why?" Wright asked. Miller pointed to one file. "These are medical records. The Xanthian ruling class has some kind of genetic disease. They're dying out." Collins looked at the screen. "And human DNA. According to this, our genetic structure is special to them. Something in our DNA might help cure their disease." The 3 sat in silence as the ship jumped to safety. "We need to get this to Dr. Phillips," Wright finally said. "This changes everything." Miller nodded. The Xanthians aren't fighting just for power. They're fighting for survival. As their ship raced through space, Miller wondered if this new information would help humans win the war, or make the Xanthians even more desperate and dangerous. The human fleet gathered near Ta Siti, hidden behind a large gas giant. 20 ships, newly fitted with rail guns, waited for Admiral Jackson's orders. The target, a Xanthian outpost controlling this sector of space. On the bridge of her flagship, the EDF Invincible, Admiral Jackson looked at the tactical display. "All ships report ready, Admiral," her communications officer said. Jackson nodded. "Send the message to all captains. Operation Spearhead begins in 30 minutes." Captain Howard stood on the bridge of his ship, the EDF Valiant. His crew was nervous but ready. "Remember," Howard told them, "the Xanthians expect us to use energy weapons. They don't know about our rail guns. We'll have surprise on our side." Lieutenant Wright, temporarily assigned to Howard's ship, checked the weapon systems. Rail guns at full power. Tungsten rods loaded and ready. Howard smiled. "Let's show these aliens what humans can do." The human fleet moved from behind the gas giant, approaching the Xanthian outpost at full speed. The outpost consisted of a space station and 5 warships. "Xanthian ships are powering weapons," Wright reported. "They've seen us. All ships, fire rail guns on my mark," Howard ordered. 3, 2, 1, mark. 20 human ships fired together. Hundreds of tungsten rods, moving at incredible speed, streaked toward the Xanthian ships. The Xanthians activated their shields, ready to block energy weapons. But instead, the solid metal rods smashed through their shields like they weren't there. "Direct hits on all Xanthian ships," Wright shouted. The largest Xanthian ship exploded as rods tore through its power core. 2 others spun out of control, critically damaged. The remaining ships tried to return fire, but they were confused by the unexpected attack. "Second volley, fire," Howard ordered. Another wave of tungsten rods finished off the remaining ships. Only the space station remained. "Admiral, the station is sending a transmission," Howard's communications officer reported. The main screen showed a Xanthian officer. Its gray-blue skin was pale with fear. "We surrender," the Xanthian said. "Please, no more fire." Admiral Jackson's voice came through the fleet channel. "Prepare boarding teams. We take the station intact." Howard led the first boarding team, with Wright at his side. They secured the command center quickly. Most Xanthians surrendered without fighting. But as they moved deeper into the station, a group of Xanthian soldiers ambushed them. Energy blasts hit 2 human soldiers. "Take cover," Howard shouted, pulling an injured soldier behind a wall. Wright fired back, hitting 1 Xanthian. But there were too many. They were pinned down. "We need backup," Howard called through his radio. Suddenly, a blast rocked the corridor. Wright pushed Howard away just as part of the ceiling collapsed. When the dust cleared, Howard saw that Wright was gone. Xanthian soldiers had taken her during the confusion. "Right," Howard shouted, but it was too late. The Xanthians had retreated deeper into the station, taking Wright as a prisoner. Despite this loss, the battle was a victory. For the first time, humans had defeated Xanthian forces and captured one of their bases. The news spread quickly across human space. 2 days later, Admiral Jackson addressed her captains. "Today we proved the Xanthians can be beaten," she said, "but our work is just beginning." Captain Howard's ship was badly damaged, and we lost Lieutenant Wright. "I've ordered search teams to find her." As she spoke, all communication systems suddenly activated. Every screen showed the same image: a tall Xanthian in elaborate armor. "I am Supreme General Kazanera of the Xanthian Empire," the alien said. "Your recent attack was meaningless. The full might of our armada is now coming to crush your pathetic species. Surrender now or face extinction." The transmission ended. The room was silent. Admiral Jackson looked at her captains. "Well," she said with a small smile, "it seems we got their attention." Unknown to the Xanthians, the battle had been recorded and broadcast by the resistance across all occupied territories. For the first time in centuries, the Xanthian Empire faced rebellions on multiple worlds. Their military, used to easy victories, now had to fight on many fronts at once. The human victory was small, but it had changed everything. 1 week after the victory at Ta Siti, Earth celebrated its first win against the Xanthian Empire. But in the high-security meeting room at Earth Defense Headquarters, the mood was tense. "We should negotiate while we have leverage," Secretary Richard Porter said, his voice sharp. Porter was the head of Earth's diplomatic corps, a small man with cold eyes. "One victory doesn't mean we can win this war." Admiral Jackson slammed her hand on the table. "Negotiate. After what they did to our colonies, the Xanthians only understand force." President Helen Carter watched the argument with tired eyes. The war had aged her. "What do you suggest, Admiral?" "We continue the offensive. Strike more outposts. Show them humans won't be pushed around." Porter shook his head. "And lose more ships and lives. Our fleet is tiny compared to theirs." "Our fleet has something they don't expect," Jackson replied. "The will to fight." President Carter raised her hand for silence. "Admiral, you have 2 weeks to show progress. After that, we consider other options." Meanwhile, in a Xanthian prison facility on an asteroid base, Lieutenant Wright sat in a small cell. Her uniform was torn, and a cut on her face had barely healed. The cell door opened, and 2 Xanthian guards entered. "Come," one said in broken English. "Sub-commander wants talk." They took Wright to a larger room, where a Xanthian officer waited. Unlike the others Wright had seen, this one had lighter skin and no armor. "I am Sub-Commander Varric," the Xanthian said in perfect English. "I apologize for your treatment." Wright said nothing, watching carefully. "Your attack at Ta Siti was impressive," Varric continued. "No one has defeated Xanthian ships in battle for 3 centuries. There's a first time for everything," Wright said. Varric made a sound like quiet laughter. "Indeed. That is why I wanted to meet you. To understand." "Understand what?" "Why fight a war you cannot win?" Varric asked. "The Supreme General has ordered our main fleet to crush your world. Billions will die." Wright looked directly at Varric. "Then why are we talking? Why not just kill me?" "Because not all Xanthians want this war." Varric moved closer. "Some of us believe there are better ways than conquest." Wright was surprised, but tried not to show it. "You have rebels too." "We have those who see the future differently," Varric said carefully. "The genetic harvesting program is controversial." Before Wright could ask more, alarm sounded. A guard rushed in, speaking rapidly in the Xanthian language. Varric looked concerned. "Return her to her cell," Varric ordered. "Quickly." Back at Bastion Point, Commander Miller prepared for a mission. His team included Collins and 20 of the best soldiers from the Resistance. "Our intel shows Lieutenant Wright is being held at this facility," Miller explained, pointing to a hologram of the asteroid base. "We go in fast. Get her out faster." The door opened, and Captain Howard walked in. His arm was in a sling from injuries in the last battle. "I'm coming with you," Howard said. Miller shook his head. "You're still recovering, Captain." "She was taken on my watch," Howard insisted. "I'm coming." Before Miller could argue, Dr. Phillips entered. "I have something you need to see before you go." She showed them a data tablet. "I've been studying the genetic information you stole. The Xanthian condition is worse than we thought. Their ruling class has maybe 10 years before total genetic collapse. That's why they're so desperate for human DNA," Collins said. Phillips nodded. "Human genes have something they need, but here's the interesting part. I might be able to use this information to develop a treatment for them." Miller looked surprised. "You want to help them, after everything they've done?" "I want to end this war," Phillips said. "This could be leverage." As they spoke, Admiral Jackson joined them. "There's another problem. Earth politicians are getting nervous. Secretary Porter is pushing to delay our next offensive." Miller frowned. "If we wait, the Xanthians will bring in reinforcements." "Exactly," Jackson said. "That's why your rescue mission just got more important." If you can get right out, whatever intelligence she has might convince Earth to stay the course. The rescue team boarded their stealth ship an hour later. As they prepared for jump, Miller looked at the determined faces around him. The Xanthians think they know humans, he said. They think we're predictable. But they're about to learn something about us. Howard nodded. What's that, Commander? Miller smiled grimly. We never leave our people behind. The ship disappeared into jump space, heading toward enemy territory where Wright waited, and perhaps the key to winning the war. The Xanthian asteroid base loomed ahead, its surface covered with defense turrets and sensor arrays. Miller's rescue ship approached slowly with its stealth systems active. Sensors showed 20 guards in the prison section, Collins reported, studying the screen. And look at this. He pointed to a large ship docked at the base. That's a Xanthian command vessel. High-ranking officers must be on board. Howard checked his weapon. That complicates things, or makes them interesting, Miller said with a small smile. New plan. Team 1 still goes for Wright. Team 2 places explosives on that command ship. A distraction? Collins asked. Miller nodded. The best kind. The stealth ship attached to the asteroid's dark side. The team cut through the outer hull and entered the base. They moved silently through maintenance tunnels, avoiding Xanthian patrols. At a junction, Miller split the team. Howard, take your group and get right. Collins, you're with me. Howard's team moved toward the prison section. They encountered 2 guards and quickly knocked them out with stun weapons. At the prison control room, Howard's tech expert hacked the door. Inside, a Xanthian officer looked up in surprise. Before he could react, Howard stunned him. Find Wright's cell, Howard ordered. Meanwhile, Miller and Collins reached the docking bay. The command ship was bigger up close, with strange symbols on its hull. Set charges here and here. Miller pointed to key areas. Timer for 15 minutes. As Collins placed the explosives, a door opened. 3 Xanthian soldiers walked out. Miller and Collins ducked behind cargo containers. They'll see the charges, Collins whispered. A Xanthian stepped from the shadows. It was Sub-Commander Varick. Commander Miller, I presume. Varick said quietly. Lieutenant Wright described you. Miller kept his weapon ready. Why are you helping us? As I told your lieutenant, not all Xanthians want this war. Varick glanced at the charges. Your plan is good, but incomplete. The ship's data core contains the final attack plans against Earth. 3rd level, central chamber. Miller looked suspicious. Why should I trust you? Because right now, Supreme General Kasner is on that ship, planning to kill millions of your people and mine. Varick's eyes showed something Miller hadn't seen in a Xanthian before, emotion. I cannot stop him alone. In the prison section, Howard found Wright's cell. She looked up as the door opened, ready to fight. When she saw Howard, relief washed over her face. About time, she said with a weak smile. Sorry for the delay, Howard replied, helping her up. Traffic was terrible. Wright's smile disappeared. We need to find Varick. He's been helping me. The Xanthian officer. Why would he? An alarm blared through the base. Red lights flashed in the corridors. Intruder alert, a voice announced in the Xanthian language. Time to go, Howard said. He activated his comm. Miller, we have Wright. Heading to extraction point. Change of plans, Miller replied. Meet us at the command ship. We're going after their attack plans. Back at the docking bay, Miller, Collins, and Varick moved through the command ship. The corridors were empty. Most officers were responding to the alarm. They reached the central chamber. Varick accessed the main computer, copying files to a data device. These are all their battle plans, Varick explained. Fleet positions, attack trajectories, everything. Collins looked at the data. This is incredible. Suddenly, the chamber door opened. Supreme General Kasner stood there, flanked by guards. His eyes widened at the sight of Varick working with humans. Traitor, he hissed. Varric turned calmly. "No, General. I am loyal to our people. This war will destroy us." Kazanair raised his weapon. Miller pushed Varric aside as energy blasts filled the room. Guards fell as Collins returned fire. "Time to leave," Miller shouted as the ship trembled. The explosives had begun detonating. They ran through the corridors, meeting Howard and Wright at an intersection. Together, they fought their way back to their ship, Varric leading them through shortcuts. As they reached their vessel, the Xanthian command ship exploded. The blast rocked the asteroid, sending debris flying everywhere. "Did we get the General?" Wright asked as their ship detached from the asteroid. Varric looked at the burning wreckage. "No, he would have evacuation protocols." Miller nodded grimly. "Then this isn't over." "But it has changed," Varric said, holding up the data device. "With these plans and my knowledge of Xanthian strategy, your people have a chance." As their ship jumped to safety, Miller realized they had just altered the course of the war. The human fleet was no longer fighting blind. And now they had something even more valuable than battle plans. They had divided the enemy from within. Admiral Jackson stood on the bridge of the EDF Invincible, watching the largest human fleet ever assembled. 100 ships, all upgraded with rail guns and new armor, moved into formation. The data stolen by Miller's team had changed everything. "The Xanthian Armada is approaching, Admiral," her tactical officer reported. 200 ships, just as Varric predicted. Jackson nodded. "Are our ships in position?" "Yes, Admiral. Captain Howard's battle group is hiding behind the moon. Commander Miller's forces are ready in the asteroid field." Jackson smiled. The Xanthians expected a direct confrontation. They would get something very different. On the EDF Defender, now repaired and upgraded, Captain Howard watched his tactical display. "Everyone remembers the plan," he asked his crew. Lieutenant Wright, back at her station, nodded. "Wait for the main fleet to engage, then hit their flanks with everything we have." In another part of space, Miller's smaller, faster ships waited among the asteroids. Collins checked their special weapons, missiles loaded with Dr. Phillips' newest creation. "Are we sure these will work?" Collins asked. "No," Miller admitted, "but Phillips says they'll disable Xanthian ships without destroying them. That's what we want." The Xanthian Armada appeared, their massive dreadnoughts leading the way. Supreme General Kazanair stood on his command ship, confident in his victory. "The humans have gathered their pathetic fleet," he told his officers. "Today we end this rebellion." Unknown to him, Sub-Commander Varric had secretly contacted other Xanthian officers who opposed the war. 20 ships in the Armada were commanded by Varric's allies, waiting for the signal to turn against Kazanair. Admiral Jackson opened a channel to all human ships. "Remember what we fight for today. Not just for revenge, but for the right to exist. The Xanthians think they're superior. Let's show them what humans can do." She turned to her weapons officer. "All ships, fire railguns." The human fleet fired as one. Thousands of tungsten rods streaked toward the Xanthian ships. The front line of Xanthian vessels took heavy damage, their shields useless against the physical projectiles. Kazanair was shocked. "Return fire. Full power to forward weapons." The Xanthian ships fired their energy weapons. Some human ships were hit, but their new armor, designed based on Xanthian technology, absorbed much of the damage. As the fleets engaged, Howard's ships appeared from behind the moon, attacking the Xanthian fleet from behind. "Fire all weapons," Howard ordered. His ships targeted the Xanthians' engine sections, disabling rather than destroying them. Miller's group launched their special missiles. The weapons detonated near Xanthian ships, releasing a cloud that interfered with their power systems. Ship after ship lost power and drifted in space. On Kazanair's vessel, systems began failing. "What is happening?" he demanded. Varric's allies had begun their revolt, turning their weapons on ships loyal to Kazanair. The Xanthian fleet fell into chaos. Caught between 3 human battle groups and facing rebellion from within, Their carefully planned formation broke apart. Admiral Jackson spoke again to her fleet. "Push forward. Take their command ship." The EDF Invincible led the charge, firing precisely at Kazanir's vessel. With its engines damaged and weapons offline, the Xanthian command ship could not escape. Jackson, Miller, and Howard led boarding teams onto Kazanir's ship. They fought their way to the bridge where Kazanir waited with his final guards. "Surrender," Jackson demanded. "Your fleet is defeated." Kazanir looked at the humans with hatred. "I will never surrender to lesser beings." "We're not asking," Miller said, weapons ready. After a brief fight, Kazanir was captured. The war that had seemed impossible to win was over in a single decisive battle. 1 week later, a peace conference began on neutral ground. Varric led the new Xanthian government. Dr. Phillips presented her cure for the Xanthian genetic disease, not demanding surrender in return, but offering it freely. "Why help us after all we did?" Varric asked her. "Because that's what makes humans different," Phillips replied. "We fight when we must, but we help when we can." The peace treaty transformed the once mighty Xanthian Empire into a federation of equal worlds. Human colonies were rebuilt, and joint research projects began between species that had once been enemies. Admiral Jackson watched the signing ceremony with Miller, Howard, Wright, and Collins beside her. "Do you think it will last?" Wright asked. Jackson smiled. "Peace is always harder than war, but we're good at doing the impossible." As the humans and Xanthians worked together to build something new, the stars became not a battlefield, but a frontier for cooperation. The empire had fallen, but something better had risen in its place.